The citizens of Gesgapegiag, together with the Migmawei pay tribute and honor the late Paul Martin. Paul has left a rich legacy to the Mi'kmaq. He started working on the Grand Cascapedia River when he was only 13 years old and worked there for over 60 years. He is considered a legendary guide of the river. Paul was born January 17, 1934, to Isaac and Susie Martin of Gesgapegiag. Here's part of an interview that Paul did in 2005 with Bernard Jerome.
Daniel lives at Hamuisa, Gesgapegiag. Okay, again, date of birth. Date of birth, June 17, 1934, right? Anti may widahan na ba na kanina? Wala mo, anti may wiyan, iba na mo malagaw, nina ka rin. Iba na mo, namido ko, ako, iba na mo, punajoda mo, kaya anti may wiyan. Na punajoda mo na ganagalo, niyali, ay. At akalo na si Jamaica, may sure, I guess, namido, nas ko, ay, kasi, anti may wiyan, no. Try may wiyan, guys, diya, magtangan sa ka na, diya, with a lent to niya, never, kat niya na, Chinam Delwis sabi ko, sa ka na ni Delway na ni Miyamuch, 55 years na ni Miyamuch. Ito, kasi kita ba na? Ala, Big Janet Delwis place.
Sa kaliya ko na sinalay sa Gesgapegiag.
Oh yeah, he's 54 summer. Nigala summer, 54. Alo na siya.
He's 54 years old already?
Yeah. Then, na siya buwi siya kan. Malanig na nandan kay.
Apa nag-standel bita kay Cebu.
Ya, panahon siya din kahit sa Lone Lake ko siya din. Pananegod na sa lahat. Gaya.
Wala ay Davao Island ito ba?
Yeah.
Okay.
Paul is responsible for providing valuable information on place names for many areas along the rivers, and this allowed the Migmawei Secretariat to correctly add over 40 place names to the Gesgapegiag map.
The information that he brought with us, basically, it certainly helped with our study, and it certainly helped with the mapping of the Gesgapegiag, because he was one of the contributors of the place name, or identifying the place names of the Gesgapegiag. He certainly knew the area more so than anyone that I know, because when you're talking to the elders, he was a good part of the history of Gesgapegiag, and basically, he was very. His information was crucial to our research.
Paul sat with us on the Migmawei Elder Circle since the inception in 2008. He came to many meetings, and he was a quiet gentleman. But he had his way of sharing his information, sharing his knowledge with us. Even through his last days, he left Mala, left Gesgapegiag to be with us in Listerguj. He was with us that day, and it was nice to be with him. I always remember him being a quiet man. He had a special knowledge, special relationship with the salmon. He had some deep knowledge of how the salmon acted in the rivers, and how one of the things, he was a very good guide for the community in Gesgapegiag. And that knowledge he passed on. He passed on to other people in a true Mi'kmaq, through Migmawei. He shared that information, shared that knowledge with others from Gesgapegiag. Although I don't think we have all his knowledge about the salmon, I think enough of it's passed on.
Well, I first started guiding probably when I was about 17 or 18 years old, and periodically guided with Paul, because at that time, still going to school and still all over the place. But so in the summers, I'd probably fish 10 days with him in those first couple of years. Then by the time I hit about 20 years old, 21 years old, I started guiding full summers with him. So we went on to guide about 5 years together, which I can't say it was always that easy because Paul was from the old school, which meant to learn my way and right away and no other way.
Yeah.
So at first it was kind of difficult, and but after a season of working together, we became good friends. You know, that's one thing that happens when you have a guiding partner. You have 120 days together on the river, and that's, you know, all day long. You don't finish until 9 most of the times. You have afternoons at home, but most of the time you spend time with that person more than you do with your own family as a guide.
Right.
For the entire summer anyway. So during that time we became obviously great friends, you know.
Yeah.
So he went from my biggest critic to a good friend and a mentor, you know. And everything I do on the river now is based from Paul. Paul was not just a great guide, but a great friend.
Well, Paul, first of all, I don't even remember when I first met him. He's just always been around. He was always a very good friend of Guy. And of course, Paul was an infamous salmon guide. So when we started the Micmac camp, our fishing lodge on the Gesgapegiag River, we inherited Paul as a guide, which was great. So then the relationship just really grew and really grew. And no, it definitely was not an employer-employee relationship. Paul was family.
Yeah.
Paul was always there. And I loved him. And we still miss him.
I think his longevity has something to do with who he is. I mean, he's a Mi'kmaq, grew up in a time of dire needs, some of the worst conditions in this community, survived them, and was successful at becoming a world-renowned guide.
Right.
You know, and so, and obviously just being Mi'kmaq, having that connection to the land, having that connection to the salmon.
Yeah.
And that is what really placed him apart.
Sa kenapa kau dati mi kuda ada di sekitar time we ko David mo. Mili dah me ko dan mesti ada flex day mi tu. Kan dia gis ko bana dia keluar ko pilu ni. Got a state look maybe 40 years ago, 45, 40, 40, 50 years ago. Meski ko difference ni gis ko doon car mi set ko ekon man. Katay me na mo electric mo phone pa mo ko. Kanya gis ko padalay ko ni ucap ko ni. So lo kalagay wit. Me gis leda sa marji kami kitulian. Katay me na man ano. Gis liya man kami.
You know, his understanding of salmon, the nature around him. He paid attention to every indicator that was going on. He watched the birds. He watched the bugs. You know, anything that was going on in the environment indicated to him where to go next to find the fish.
Wow.
So where no one else, you know, could find a salmon in a pool or in that region, he would sort of look around, see what's happening, and then just refer to his own knowledge and find the fish. He found fit amazing. I mean, this guy on A water, which is the lower portion of the river, is not renowned to have as many fish as seawater, which is higher up.
Okay.
And every year he was still getting 70 salmon. You know, where most people have a hard time to get 20 or 30 salmon on that sector. He was getting as many salmon as the people on the seawater or anywhere else in the river was getting. And sometimes ending up with the most salmon caught on that river.
Wow.
He's just an amazing guide, not just for salmon guide, not just for relations with the clients, but his connection to the land and understanding of his environment. It's just incredible.
I was 21-year-old.
Okay.
And I heard about Paul working upriver, and so, the chief and council that time was Guy Kondo and all them asked me if I wanted to go work with Paul. So I said, sure, no problem. So anyway, I worked with Paul and he told me a few stuff that you know what to do and this and that, and I said, okay. So finally said, when you're on the boat, you don't talk too much. I'll do all the talking and you know, you just listen, and when I tell you pick up the anchor, you do. So I said, okay, no problem. So I'm sitting in the back, I'm not talking. So I was always talking to the fishermen. So he told one story that I remember, told almost every fisherman. He said, I've been in this river over 35 years now. And this is like 24 years ago there. He said, yeah. He said, I've been fishing, I know this river by heart. I know where the salmons are, and I know, you know, where the rocks are and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
He said the reason they gave me a job as a guide, he used to poach a lot.
Okay,
So he said, yeah, they gave me a job, and I said I used to get salmon just like that, and he said I could swim like a go devil. I said, holy jeez, a go devil. I said, what's that now?
Yeah,
anyway, you know, a couple of weeks passed, so we went upriver. We went back to work, and I still remember that was a Saint Jean Baptiste. There's two old men, they were like maybe 90s, coming on a boat, and said, morning boys. And I said, good morning. Said, we're not going to keep you too long today. And Paul said, why? Because it's your holiday, Saint Jean Baptiste. Said, that holiday is not for us, it's for French people. I said, I'm an Indian, me. I said, we're not going in early. And I'm 21, when I heard I started, we're going to go in early. Hey, I enjoyed it, and you know, I'll have a afternoon off, or an hour at least off. But anyway, we went fishing. We didn't get no salmon. So the fisherman said it was about 11:30, I still remember that time, so I said, oh, half an hour that we're going to go home.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're coming back, and then there was like a sharp turn, and there was four of us, and these two old people were heavy, and I was heavy, and he was the small. Yeah. So anyway, we're going, and there was like a sharp turn, and next thing, the boat moved, and I'm looking at my feet, I said, holy, we got water in our boat. I looked back, Paul was in the water, two old men were in the water, and I was like, so I panicked, I grabbed my two pillows, jumped off the boat. I started dog paddling to the shore. It wasn't far, maybe 5-6 feet from the shore. So I grabbed the two old men, and then Paul is looking at me. Hey Nell. I said, yeah, help me. I said, just put your feet on the ground and you'll reach the ground there. So anyway, our stuff all, we're going home, and I said, Paul, I said, yeah. I said, I thought you know how to swim like a go devil. He stops the car. You want to be smart, or you want to walk home here? You'll find out what's a go devil. So we're going home, and I said, oh, we probably have the afternoon now, because all our stuff is wet and all that. And it was Saint Jean Baptiste, and I had a softball tournament.
Yeah.
So I put all my uniform. I told my mom, I said, oh, we're probably not working tonight. Guess who shows up 5 minutes later? Paul. He's tooting the horn at home at my mom's, and I said, yeah. Oh, that's your new uniform for tonight? I said, what do you mean? Well, we're going out. I said, then he, you know, well, everybody that knows Paul, there was lots of beep, beep, you know, swearing and all that there. Sure enough, we went back with those two old men, and he blamed all the fishermen. Like he said, that's you guys' fault what happened this morning. But he said, how come Nelson had to save you? I thought you were a go devil. And he told them, if you guys don't be quiet, we'll be done at 8 o'clock with no salmon.
More than what I have in
I know
that
for a
thing.
fact when I joined the baseball team, I was the age of 17, and I joined the men's league at that time. Just came from my juniors team, so I embarked on the men's league, and Paul was our second baseman. And I came to learn that there is no way a baseball is going to go through him. You know, at the end of the ball game, you could see the bruises on the body that there is, like it was true. There was no way a batter is going to go through a Mr. Paul Martin at that time, because he would stop it no matter what. And if he gets it in the body, he would get the job done. So you know, for a fact, he was my uncle.
Yeah.
And you know, we could go on and on about Mr. Paul Martin.
Because remember Paul, when I first started playing ball, softball, baseball at the time, he was still playing. He was our second baseman. And also in the winter when I started playing broom ball, he was also playing. So I remember he used to be our goalie. I remember one time, it was in the middle of the game, call time, referee called time. We thought something was wrong, so he leaned back against the net, took his mask off, reached into his pocket, took his comb out, started combing his hair, put his comb back in his pocket, put the face mask back on. Okay. Oh, that was hilarious. I remember that of Paul. He was always doing something like that.
Yeah.
I remember one time, as I was growing up to play music, he invited me over to his house, and I know for a fact that when Paul played music with my dad, my late dad, back in the early 50s, he was the Elvis Presley character on the Henry Lee Martin show with my mom Martha, and there was a man called Gilbert, and Paul Martin was the, I think he did a lot of impressions that Elvis Presley did. So a lot of people remembered that, so you know, we got to know him. Hey, oh, here comes Elvis, and he even had a little wave on his hair that you know that he had. But I could you know, at that time I couldn't picture him. I was too young. But a lot of stories that I've heard, he was the Elvis Presley on my dad's show. And what I understand, he did a pretty good show, and he was a, you know, he was a very good picker, he's a good singer as well. Did a lot of Hank Williams stuff, and again, Elvis Presley songs, and people enjoyed that. And a couple of years before he died, I think he got a brand new guitar that he called me. Chopper, but he said, "You want a guitar?" I said, yeah, it'd be an honor for me. And once I tuned his guitar, brand new guitar, we sat down, did a couple of tunes, and he was in heaven. So those are the little memories I have, or a lot more memories of the late Paul Martin. So, you know, we still miss him here in Gesgapegiag, and may he rest in peace today. So we thank you for just sharing all the memories that he had, and for the little things that I know about him.
Well, yes, I used to go fishing with him every now and then, like from here to the bridge, and to the old bridge, and basically, you know, this is many years ago, and I remember one Sunday morning he would, you know, we were fishing on a boat, and the game wardens came along. They were standing on the shore, and you know, basically they were telling us we weren't allowed to fish there. This is like about a good 50 years ago, and we're not allowed to fish there, you know. And he gave us all kinds of reasons why we shouldn't be fishing there, and Paul just kept answering him back in his own way, you know. And then finally he told him, look, if I'm not allowed to fish here, why don't you come over here and, you know, remove me from fishing here? Of course, they didn't have any boat or anything. Finally, they just walked away, and you know, that was one experience that I had with him. But you know, he knew of his rights basically, and he would exercise them in his own way, you know, by fishing whenever he needed to fish. It's not because he wanted to fish in many ways, or many of us, but there was a need at the time. You know, we had to feed our families.
He's a very good guy there. Every morning he comes in and he takes garbage out for me and makes coffee and helps out.
Yeah, so you saw him every day, you worked with him, people talked about him, guests and all that.
Oh,
and
the guests always talk about him every time they come back to the fishing there.
Yeah.
He's a great guide and everything.
Yeah. Why do you think they why do you think they remembered him so much, or
Because I don't know. I never went in the river with them, and so I don't know what's going on over there.
Yeah.
But they talk about him all the time, and you know.
Yeah. And when he was in here, like, what would he say? Like, you know, would he say a joke? Would he share a story, or?
Yeah, like he always wants to, you know, hold my hand, and you know, he said, yeah, I like you and everything. I said, yeah, okay, Paul, time to do the garbage. He likes to do it. He likes to joke around and everything, though.
Paul was amazing. He loved the river.
Yeah.
He knew every rock, stone, every salmon lie. He knew the river so well. And we always like to say that every big Gesgapegiag salmon that's gone up that river has swam past Paul at some point in life as a smolt, as a par, as a grilse, as a small salmon, as a large salmon. It's like he was just part of the river. If you spoke about salmon fishing on the Gesgapegiag, any angler who's been back and forth to this river over a number of years knew of Paul Martin. Whether they had fished with him or not,
Right.
they knew of him and they knew about him because he was just infamous. And it's funny because either a love-hate relationship, because Paul, he had his own way of doing things.
Right.
He loved his anglers. He loved to really give them a good going over, and not all anglers like that.
I didn't fish with them a lot, but the first year I was here,
Okay.
I think it was 1999, and I had a friend here by the name of Billy Graham, not the preacher, but somebody else. And Billy's a free spirit, and he kind of did his own thing. And if you knew Paul, he believed there was only one way to fish, which happened to be his way.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
In like 45 degrees. You know, go out as far as you can if you're doing a pool, and when you get to your maximum, you move down. Anyways, that afternoon we had been that morning we had been fishing DeWitton, and I had a dry fly, and I was out in the ledge fishing, and my buddy was up on the shore, and they can see the fish. And I had pulled the fly out too soon, and Paul had said, "Wait till I tell you." So I'm there, and I hear, "Yeah!" And I pulled. And it was Graham thinking he could see the fish coming up to grab the fly. And of course, I never gave him a chance.
Yeah.
Well, Paul turned on him and just, he had very colorful speech. You know? That kind of put a damper on that. So then we were fishing, and Billy would not listen. He would cast upriver, and he would do everything backwards. And Paul would get terribly, terribly mad. Anyways, that night we go to Upper Limestone, which is now called after Paul Martin.
Right.
And he says to Billy, "Billy, it's your turn to start, but you don't listen. Now you watch Charlie, what he does, and you do exactly what he does." So I get out there, and he says, 45 degrees, short, longer, 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 when you're at your maximum. 2 steps down, and let her go. About 10 minutes later, a nice, I forget, 12, 15 pound salmon. He says to my friend Billy, "Billy, it's your turn." Billy's first cast. Upriver. Well, Paul went berserk. Called him every name in the book, and he says, "I'm leaving you. I'm not. You do it on your own." And he went off and smoked a cigarette somewhere. And poor old Billy, hot, humid night, all over the place. After an hour and total perspiration, he said to Paul, "There are no fish here." He said, "Give me your rod." And Paul went down and went doot, 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 doot. 35 pounder. And gave him the rod and said, "No, you bring him in." So, I mean, that's what I remember the most about him. And what his language was incredible. It was, I enjoyed him a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one thing about Paul, though, was if you paid attention and you listened and you followed what he said, it was a pleasure to fish with him. But if you didn't listen to him, he'd simply ignore you. As Charlie mentioned, he'd just go off and sit by himself.
It was.
I always got along fine with him. I guess I can listen. Okay, where there? But he was fun to be with anyway.
My name is Mark Gauthier, General Manager of the Gesgapegiag Society, and I've heard about Paul Martin a long time ago for sure. He was a character on the river. I didn't have the chance to work with him so much, but the society, the Gesgapegiag Society, the river manager, named a pool after him, Paul Martin's Run. So if you ever go on A Zone and or drive up the 299, you'll see the pool sign with his name on it. So Paul was for sure a well-known guide on this river for more than 45 years. So his reputation preceded him, and the fishermen knew him quite good. So just to say hi to Paul in his memory, he'll always be on the river.
If you look at all the names on that river, they're named after people from Europe. You know, these anglers that would come over here and they would name pools after them.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was right. I thought that Migmawei from my community, who's got tremendous knowledge of this river, should be honored in that fashion, to have his name put on a pool. So I didn't let him know that this was going to happen. I had gone to speak with the directors of the society, and members of council to tell them what I intended on doing, having a pool name changed, and everyone was for it. So in that season, while I was guiding with Paul, I'd ask him, which one is your favorite pool? And it would change, you know, from time to time. Like I said, he paid attention to the environment all the time. And,
Right.
But more and more, he would always refer to Upper Limestone, which was a pool that we fished quite often. And so I said, all right, that's going to be the pool that we're going to put in his name. So at the Fall Festival in St. Joe's, Gesgapegiag, he was presented with a plaque honoring him and changing that pool from Upper Limestone to Paul Martin's Run, which he was pretty happy about.
Yeah.
So the walking stick has a carved date on it of 1975. There's a small little beaver engraving on the other side. And this was Paul Martin's walking stick that he used for obviously a number of years during his time on the river. It's got the word Micmac inscribed on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Here we've got his ball cap, which has been well loved and used. And on all the family photographs that Bernadine brought in, his daughter brought in to share with us and scan, he's wearing it in all of them. So this hat was Paul Martin for many, many years. I'm told he also had a large pair of sunglasses that he wore absolutely every day on the river for decades. And in these pictures, you'll see him with the hat and sunglasses. The sunglasses actually disappeared the day of his death. The family has not been able to find them. But to them, this hat and these sunglasses was Paul Martin.
It's been just such a pleasure the entire time we fished together. It was very difficult to see him fall sick.
Yeah.
And Paul knew every rock on the bottom of the Gesgapegiag River. He's the only guy I know that could motor a boat backwards down the rapids at Dimmock with a fisherman standing up in the canoe with a 30-pound salmon on the line.
Wow.
You find another guy to do that, I guarantee you can't. I can guarantee. I have much respect for all the guides on the river, but Paul was in a completely other class. He was in another class all by himself. As a boatsman, nobody compared to him.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone ever will.
Yeah.
He had a lot of guts on that river, but like I said, he knew every rock in the river. He understood the river. He's a second-generation guide.
Yeah.
He guided as a teenager with his father, who was a guide. And then, when he became a man, became a guide himself.
Right.
He's got over 55 years on that river.
Right.
You know, he's not always sure what year, you know, how many. Sometimes he'll tell you 52, sometimes he'll tell you 57. It really depends whether or not he's counting his teenage years, you know. But, so, obviously, if you want to be as good of a boatsman as a man like that, you better put in another 40 years.
With Guy, Paul and Guy, their history goes back so far, you know, childhood friends, adult friends. They did many things together over the years, you know, whether it was working together, whether it was playing cards.
Yeah.
In the old days, probably having a few beers together.
Okay, yeah.
Music and even a little bit of poaching on the river back in the day, you know.
Right.
So they shared a lot, and for years and years and years, the tradition for them, for that little group of friends, which would be Guy and Paul and Arnold Martin and Harry and Edward and Danny, like all the family with their close friends, was playing cards, getting together at Eileen and Arnold's and playing Polydin and laugh and tease each other and whatnot. And he was, even at the end when he was pretty sick, he would go. He would play cards. And it was just this unique bond between them, you know, between that whole group.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see. It was like that camaraderie. You don't see that so often nowadays.
Right. Yeah.
You
Over
really
here.
don't.
Yeah.
You really don't see it. It's not the same type of relationships that exist, I find, nowadays.
Yeah.
That this little group share. You know, of course, we lost Arnold.
Yeah.
And Paul before that. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's getting smaller and smaller. But,
Yeah.
you know, they would always bend over backwards to help each other.
Mm.
Paul would do anything for the family, for Guy, for myself, for the guests, for my children. And we do the same thing for him, you know, and it was something that was really special. Really special. And seeing those type of relationships between, say, Guy and Paul, I'll say it again, you don't see it very often. And I don't know if I'll ever see that type of thing again, because it was just that close. You know, and it really impacted us to lose him.
You know, one of the things I believed Paul cared about or felt about was the three communities, strengthening the relationship between the three communities. And for us, it was about strengthening the claim, being able to be with our elders. It always does that for us. So, like I said, even on his last days, he left Mulla, sat with us that day in his quiet way, being a gentleman. And we were, you know, I guess saddened and surprised when we heard the news that he had passed away that day. So even to the end, he gave his time and commitment to the Migmawei Maui Secretariat.
I've got to say that his life in the community was with his wife.
Yeah.
Mainly with his wife. He did everything for her, everything with her.
Yeah.
Aside from that, his life was the river.
Yeah.
So it was really, his life was his wife and his river. But in the evenings, of course, he made time for his friends.
Yeah.
With my aunts and uncles, my father, and they played cards almost every evening. Almost every evening they played cards. And of course, Paul, you could only play cards with him in the evenings when the fishing season was done, but all winter long he did.
Yeah.
But he was always with his wife. They're always driving around and enjoying the sights, and just a nice old fella.
Family was very important to Paul. He married Clara Jerome, and they had 4 children and 1 foster child. And he loved to cook. Breakfasts were his specialty, and he would make breakfast for the entire family every Sunday morning. Paul struggled with alcoholism during his life. He smoked and drank. One evening, while he was driving with his granddaughter Carrie Ann, she asked him why he did this, why he drank and smoked, when he knew that he was hurting himself and hurting his family. Paul promised his granddaughter that he would stop for her. He quit both drinking and smoking that day. It was a vow he kept.
I went skydiving, I went Rocky Mountain climbing, I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Blue Manchu, and I looked deeper and I spoke sweeter and I gave forgiveness I've been denying. And he said, someday I hope you get the chance to live like you were dying. He said I was finally the husband, and most of the time I wasn't. And I became a friend would like to have. And all of a sudden going fishing wasn't such an imposition. And I went 3 times that year, I lost my dad. Well, I finally read the good book, and I took a good long hard look at what I'd do if I could do it all again. And then
I just said, Dad, I'm making the best of every day. And continuing on the path that you'll have left. And with your guidance, it will always be remembered.
Dad, sorry, for being a jerk sometimes. I'd like to thank you. If it weren't for you, Dad, I wouldn't turn out the way I am today. You were like my dad, I'm sorry you didn't get to know my grandchildren, but they know you. I'm never going to forget about you. You're a piece of my heart now. You're here with me. You want to guide me now. You're going to look over me. You're going to look over my family. You're going to look over Mom. I'm just here to thank you. Say I love you. And my family loves you. We miss you. I wish you were here. And, like I said, I wish you were here.
Our best moments we've shared. Paul and I talked together a lot. He was a good friend, not just a guiding partner. So I've had the opportunity to express how I feel about him and how much he meant to me. He knows that, and I've been able to tell him that while he was living. So now I think if I had one question for him, I think it would be, is that enough line for you now, Paul? Because when you were fishing with Paul, all you heard was, more line! Or not straight, not good enough, over here, over there. So what I would like to have, if I had any time left with Paul, it would be on the river, as he'd be guiding me into getting my line straight out there, over the fish, and into the fish, and landing the fish without upsetting him. So that's where we would be if we had any time together again.
The Fisher King. At Swallow's Nest, she sits above the shoreline river Love. As the currents disappear around the bend, and the Fisher King is home again, their whistling and swooping sounds indicate that they're back around. They dance and float around the boat and wave their fins at the Fisher King. Up and down and around again, dancing on the water's skin, the leaves will flutter and the rivers will rise, and loud will be the salmon's cries when they see and realize that they have lost their Fisher King.
Wala rin balik about in interview.
Well, John Migmawei doon kadlong sa dati dan de pidial da ya. Ang pagkampus to gali do camp lak to mo ta me kung wakap. Pero church in there to video take to serious pa kan.
Gis milial na po yung kalakam milial ay.
Kaya na po yung picture tapos ko siya dan na mo sit.
Yeah, when I get started, it's been a documentary to a five magazine to a editors kana. Yeah, kind of either way discovery up with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so wala rin balik.
No problem.